Welcome back to Man vs. Meeple, the show where we talk about all things board game related. Today we have a Kickstarter preview. This time it is for Black Souls. This is a game from Medieval Lords, and it takes its inspiration from a very difficult video game
called Dark Souls.
Dark Souls.
Right, so this is kind of a meta game. You are a designer who is designing another game for a bunch of MMORPG players that have to traverse the level and score points. Now, each player has one of these boards in front of them. It's pretty cool. These boards are empty in the center. You're going to be placing your tiles in there through the course of the game. The game's actually two phases. There's one phase where you're acquiring the tiles, and then one phase where each of the players is actively moving their players through it, trying to survive. Yeah,
you're basically going to be building the level in the first half of the game, and that's really the meat and potatoes of the game.
Yep.
The second part of the game, like Jeremy said, it's to grab the theme. It's the playtesters playing through the level that you've designed to determine exactly how great it is. You don't want it too easy. You don't want it too hard. You want it just right.
That's right. Each player has a number of different heroes that are going to start in their a live hero pool, so to speak. These heroes represent archers and magicians and warriors and champions. And you'll be acquiring a different amount depending upon some random cards that will come up at the start of the game. Also, you're going to have 4 tiles in the center. We'll talk about these tiles in just a moment. There's court cards. Court cards are like game-end scoring cards, what you're trying to acquire specific goals by the end of the game. Each player starts with 2 of these court cards, and they tell you exactly what they do. For instance, I have to have 3 or more archers by the end of the game. And then there's 3 common ones, which everybody at the table can do.
Yeah, these kind of represent the research that you've done as a game designer on what gamers want in their games. So you have some private ones, and like Jeremy said, there's a few public ones.
The meat of the game is an auction bidding type of aspect. Each player has 6 cards in front of them. These 6 cards are numbered 1 through 6, and on the bottom of the cards is a special ability that you can do, but only if your card activates.
Yeah, and to activate your card, you have to be the only one who's played it.
Yeah.
And in a 1 to 6 player game, that can be challenging.
Yeah.
So if you play a 2 or 3, you're able to do this power. But if someone else plays a 3, then neither of you are able to.
Yeah.
Actually, a 3 is kind of a unique case, but most of the numbers basically will cancel each other out if you play it and someone else does.
Before we get into the meat of the game, we'll talk about 2 other things. One are the hack cards. Each player will start with one of these hack cards. They look like blue screens of death for you guys who are familiar with Windows systems. They allow you to kind of get around penalties in the game at very specific portions of the game. And then you have tiles. These tiles have 4 numbers across the bottom, which will tell you how many of an active type of hero you have to kill when you're traversing this particular dungeon. There's 3 different types. You have caverns, woods, and then you have dungeons. And there's also some pretty nasty bosses in here, which are typically going to wipe out entire parties if you go in there.
Right, those really come into play. Those numbers, as you're building, you have to take into consideration, because during the playtesting phase, like Jeremy said, you're just basically going to be sacrificing whole categories, or at least some quantity of those categories. So you need to collect some extra warriors or extra party members throughout the first phase of the game.
Yep, also on the very far right of the tile is a difficulty level. This is taken into consideration at the very end of the game for game end scoring. And some of the tiles will have unique aspects to it, either a treasure chest, a shrine, or a tavern in the upper left-hand corner. But you can also acquire those type of things through different actions in the game as well, which will be placed on those tiles. So let's talk about the actual gameplay itself. Depending on the number of players, there's going to be an X number of tiles in the center. It's not +1, it's just the number of players. That's because the way you bid will determine which of those tiles you get to acquire and put into your level, which can be very bad for other players in the game if they bid last in turn plays.
Indeed, because some of these things are pretty nasty when you look at these numbers, and it's going to kill maybe 3 of any given type, and you only have 3 of any given type, you're going to have to do some other things between now and the playtesting phase to account for that.
Right. So a typical round works like this. Each of the players is going to take all 6 of their cards into their hand. They're going to choose one of the cards that they wish to utilize, and they're going to place it face down in front of them. At the same time, everyone reveals their card, and you're going to look around the table to see who has the highest card and if anyone has duplicated the same card. If one player has the highest and there's no duplications, you're simply going to go in that order with the player taking their ability and then taking one of the tiles and adding it to their dungeon level. And I'm going to pick up this board and show you the dungeon level itself. When you add things to the dungeon level actually makes a snake type pattern in the game. Anytime you place a new tile, it either has to go in the location in the far left, the middle, or the top right. And each adjacent one has to be placed horizontally to the previous one. So if I place one here, one has to be placed here, or here, or here. You just keep building that pattern out.
Right.
You can never build higher or lower than what you have at that particular time. It's always adjacent to something else.
Yeah, it's nice because you're not limited to just building from the very beginning in the lower left and then growing all the way. You can build on each level. They just mix it up, making that middle level build from right to left instead of left to right.
So for instance, if I had placed the highest bid, I can take any one of these tiles and I can place it adjacent to this, or start a new row on the right side middle here. Now, the reason why you want to place them in very specific areas is because there are bonuses at the end of the game for having adjacency of particular types of tiles through the course of the game.
Yeah, you're going to want to try to build caves with other caves, dungeons with other dungeons, because if you have up to 5, 6, 7, or even 8 of the similar tiles connected continuously, you're going to score some big points that way at the end.
Now, what happens if players tie? If players tie, they get pushed to the bottom of the turn order, and they don't get their special ability.
Yeah, it's about as brutal as the video game on which this is based, because, like Jeremy said, you don't get your ability, first of all, which is pretty devastating, and you're picking last.
Yeah, these abilities allow you to do a variety of different things, either placing new party members into your tableau, drawing an extra tile out of the bag, which gives you more abilities to pick better tiles, and even jockeying and moving your tiles around once they've been previously placed. Now, one of the cards in the game is the number 3, which David said earlier. This allows you to pick up all the cards that you have previously placed. And it makes all the players at the table that aren't you place their tiles upside down when they place them at the level. So there's some memory in there on which tiles you place and where you actually place them.
Yeah, the 3 is a very powerful card. Like Jeremy said, the nasty power makes everyone else turn their tile upside down. Now, you get to look at it first, obviously, when you're taking your tile, but you want to look at it good and long, because when you place it down, you can't look at it again. So you kind of have to remember what you're going to be facing there when you flip it over.
The players at the end of the turn order, depending if they tied or not, as we said, they get pushed to the very end, and those are determined by the turn order in the previous round. So every time a card is picked, you re-push the turn order around by this card, so you know where future rounds could fall into place. And you're going to do that 12 times.
Yep, 12 times. Once everyone has 12 tiles, it's on to playtesting.
Yep, so once your board is built out and you have all 12 tiles here, everyone's going to pick up their pawn of their player color, and they're going to set it to the bottom left of their level. What they're going to do is, in turn order, simultaneously if they so wish, they're going to go to each tile in a snaking fashion all the way to the exit of the dungeon.
Hopefully.
So this is the entrance and this is the exit.
Right.
Each time they land on one of these tiles, they have to do one and only one of the actions of that particular tile. Now, when you look at the tile again, you have a set of numbers across the bottom that tell you how many of that particular type of hero have to be killed. So for instance, here I either have to kill 3 warriors, 3 magicians, 4 archers, and that's bad. So this is a level 4 tile, so obviously it's a very hard tile to get through. If you can't do any of those things, you leave your guy on that thing and you are out for the rest of the round. You're done. Your game's over.
Playtest over. I mean, really, this playtesting phase, it's almost like the scoring phase of the game.
Yep.
So it's not like you're going to be player eliminated and out for a very long time, because everyone gets through this pretty quickly and then you determine the scores. But that's what happens. If you don't have the guys necessary, you're out of the playtesting round. So you need to build these tiles in sort of a growing fashion so that you can get through some, and then maybe place a tile with a shrine or a tavern, which the shrine and the tavern allow you to either resurrect one of your dead party members or just take another party member from the supply.
Yeah, all the while making sure that you have the right types of heroes left at the end if you do survive to meet all the quirks that you have available and any of the quirks that are available at the end of the game. So once all the players have either died or made it through the level, you're going to do a scoring round. There's 5 different things that you're going to score through. You're going to get 2 points for every single one of the quirks that you have completed.
Right.
You also get points for the continuating type, orthogonally placed tiles of the same type. you get a difficulty rating. If you survived, you're going to look at the difficulty rating and get scored depending on how difficult your dungeon is as well.
Yeah, scoring can go either really quickly or a little less quickly, because if you don't survive, there's a few of these scoring categories that just won't apply to you. And we should stress, part of this game is dying.
Yeah.
Like, most players are not going to survive through their dungeon. It's really just trying to build the best dungeon possible. I mean, ultimately, like we said earlier, the perfect situation is getting through the entire dungeon with just one guy left. Because if you do get through your dungeon, one more scoring facet is that you're going to take all of the dead characters in your party, and you're going to get some amount of points for them, but you have to have survived with at least one guy to get that.
Yeah, and it's not impossible to lose the game if you have died.
Right.
If multiple people have lost and you've scored a lot of points from the quirks, you could still possibly win the game.
Exactly.
So, guys, that is Black Souls. If you like metagames, designing games of players playing the games that you've designed, that sounds like a weird thing to say. Go check out this one. It is from Medieval Lords. 2 to 6 player game. If you have any questions about the game, make them in the comments below. Subscribe to us, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and everything else that we do here at Man vs. Meeple, and we will catch you guys next time.
Bye-bye.
Season 2 of Man vs. Meeple is sponsored in part by Cool Stuff Inc. Cool stuff in stock at coolstuffinc.com.